Welcome back to part 3 of Weird Stuff I Found in Tucson, a series where I buy a bunch of rocks in the desert and slowly lose my mind. And boy do I actually mean that this time. So come join me as I check out some raw gemstones, peep the world's largest amethyst geode, and then make some very questionable financial decisions while delirious from the heat. Our first stop is Kino, which is a great place to get rough, fossils, and heat stroke. I'm really not joking about that last one either. Kino is hands down the most brutal sale that we went to this week. It is out in the middle of a dirt field with no tree cover or buildings to shade you from the oppressive Arizona sun. The only respite you will find are the tents that dot the landscape like tiny toppling oases. Oases? Either way, I really hope you brought a hat. I've got this one myself because my entire concept of the American West is based entirely off of fantasy novels written by a guy in Maine who was doing a lot of coke at the time. Right off the bat, I'm noticing that pyrite seems to be very popular this year. Or maybe it's like that every year. This is my first time here, so I actually don't know. But what I do know is that I can't show you half of it because someone carved them all into a bunch of dick. There's also plenty of fossils like this Orthoceras. Okay, a confession time. I only know what these things are because it's the long squid that the Titanic Lance is based off of, and during the sale, I actually had to open my phone and look at the Darius wiki to figure out what these things are called. And actually, part of the reason why these videos took so long to get out is because I tried to 1cc Darius Gaiden while pathing through Zone M. Is it weird that I'm much better at this game when I'm like 4 gummies deep? But enough about straight squids, how about the swirly kind? Yep, they've got those too. But word to the wise, most of these things have some degree of carving done to them. Gaze deeply into the spiral and pay attention to those ridges. Those ones are clearly done with a flat chisel. The tool marks are a dead giveaway. If we're being honest, there's always some degree of restoration work done with fossils, and honestly that may not bother you depending on where you land within the fossil purity gradient. I guess really the important thing is that you know precisely what you're getting so you don't get fleeced. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's great and all, but do they have turquoise? Buddy, this is the desert. Of course there's going to be turquoise. More turquoise than you can possibly comprehend, ranging from tiny cabochons to a slab so big that you can make a southwestern belt buckle for one of those Paul Bunyan statues that used to be everywhere. Though with the price of silver lately, you're probably going to have to sell a kidney. Or 6. Actually, speaking of things that are grossly expensive, Nvidia might want to start taking notes here because Tucson's really got them beat when it comes to selling useless chunks of silicon. You thought the 5060 was something. Well, this bad boy has all 0 of its advertised ROPs, it doesn't catch on fire, and it provides an astonishing negative 100% performance increase over the 50, 40, and even 30 series cards. It's so useless that I can't even find a port for this thing on my motherboard. Okay, to be fair, that's an absurdist statement. I mean, of course there isn't a port for this thing on my computer. It's so ancient that Billy Microsoft says I need to throw it into a landfill as of October. Because innovation. But okay, what if silicon's not your speed? Don't worry, there's still a mountain of other rough here. Lapis? You bet. Tiger iron? Of course. Obsidian? Enough of it to build a portal to hell. In Minecraft. Petrified logs? I don't know that I'd call that rough, but yes, they do have them. They're also a lot less expensive than I thought they were going to be. Make no mistake, I am not joking when I said this place has a mountain of rough. Not to be confused with a mountain, however, which is over there. I'm just kidding. Everyone knows mountains aren't real. As we say back home in a rhythmic chant around the Bloodstone Circle, it is flat all the way round. It is flat all the... Our next stop is Pueblo, which would end up being my favorite venue out of all the places we went to. However, this first initial visit went off the rails immediately because of 2 big mistakes I made before coming here. The first one is that I'm from New England, and we have humid summers, while the desert is famously not really a place that has a lot of moisture. So the entire morning I am thinking, wow, this is great. I don't feel any ill effects from the heat thanks to the lack of humidity. I was so wrong. The second mistake is that we skipped lunch. And if you think I'm stupid now, wait until you see me at 3 p.m. after being out in the desert all day and eating nothing but the aggressively mediocre hotel breakfast I had 8 hours earlier. So when we finally got to Pueblo, the first thing that we saw was a table filled with a ton of these opals in vats of water. And my initial thought process at the time was something like, oh my god, these are the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my entire life. They are exceptionally rare and valuable, and I must treasure and protect them. Then I ended up spending way more money on these stupid things than I was budgeting for. I didn't know it at the time, but these are unstable opals, which means they will crack if you let them dry out. Hence why they were submerged in water and why the seller packaged them inside of a Ziploc baggie filled with wet paper towels. So if anyone has any suggestions for some kind of container I can keep these things in, let me know in the comments. In the meantime, they're going to live inside this jar the next time I decide to be even more of a living Italian stereotype and eat this whole thing raw in one sitting. Oh, there were also vendors selling scientific specimens, and because I'm a jewelry teacher, I absolutely had to get one of these raw sulfur crystals for the classroom. Now, what does sulfur have to do with jewelry? Well, I'm glad you didn't ask. When exposed to environmental agents, such as hydrogen sulfide, silver will produce a fine film of silver sulfide on the surface of the metal. But you probably know that thin film by a different name. Tarnish. Or patina, because those two things are functionally the same. There's actually a whole video I did on this on my YouTube channel.
Sulfur is not attracted to magnets. Write that down.
Anyway, enough of the boring nerd stuff. I promised you a gigantic amethyst earlier on, and here it is. This is quite possibly the largest amethyst ever removed from the earth in one piece. It's over 20 feet tall, and it's sold for $1.2 million, which honestly is a lot less than I was expecting. I mean, I've seen watches sell for more than that at a place I used to work. Anyway, while this was all going on, I managed to track down a group of Russians in a hotel room and plan to broker a deal with them to buy some space rocks, but you're gonna have to wait until day 5 for that. This video's gone on long enough as is, so I'm just gonna have to speed run the rest of the stuff we got that day. I'll talk more about this stuff in a later video, but there are a couple of vendors selling rainbow ammonite or amylite shells. If you want to get a large opalized fossil, you're looking at 4 to 5 figures easily. But these small chunks were only 2 figures, and it was 3 for the price of 2. After I got home, I sent one of these to my best friend along with a printed out segment of a GameFAQs walkthrough for Chrono Trigger. Unfortunately, I could not find a sunstone, so he'll have to just get the 3 prism helms for now. But we're not done with amylites quite yet, because I managed to find somebody who was selling these as doublets. What this means is that they've taken a piece of that crumbly shell and then glued a piece of optical quartz on top of it to make it more suitable for jewelry. This was a secret purchase, but by the time this video goes live, my girlfriend's birthday will have come and gone, so I'm able to show this off publicly now. One of the main things I wanted to find here in Tucson was an interesting rectangular stone for a ring I had designed where the shape of that stone is supposed to resemble a spine of a book. Knowing that my girlfriend is an avid reader of AO3, I asked her to give me 4 of her favorite tags that she wouldn't mind being seen wearing. I then put them on the spines of 4 of those books, and I wanted the whole thing to kind of read like a bookshelf with an Art Deco adjacent vibe. I actually had to reshape the dome of this stone to reduce the funhouse mirror effect it had when looking at that shell, and I also made the bezel out of 14K yellow gold because I had it lying around, and because apparently I hate myself. Alright, next stone. This opal came from Australia, and I can't remember if those chunks taken out of it were always there, or if that happened as a result of me dropping this thing several times while filming it. This thing has my favorite color combination, which is blue and neon green. Actually, speaking of, it's considered best practice by many to only paint metalworking equipment with Battleship Gray, but that's not what I did recently with the belt sander that I acquired. I saw this piece of petrified wood at a table for $10, so I ended up impulse buying it because I still kind of wanted one of those petrified logs I saw earlier, but something tells me it was not going to fit in my carry-on, so I had to shelve that plan. While I was looking for space rocks, I found somebody randomly selling a book about moldavites. Now, for those unaware, moldavite is the glass that forms from Earth's sand when a space rock hits the planet. It's a bit more complicated than that, but whatever. Oh my god, I recognize that picture. Back in the early 2000s, people would re-upload the stupid image to places like ImageShack and then directly link to it on forums as sort of a proto-reaction image before that term even entered the internet lexicon. So seeing this thing in a serious, published book was very surreal because I immediately thought back to Random Insanity on GameFAQs. Anyway, after reading it, I must say this is a very good book to have if you have any interest in buying moldavites, because that stuff has a long, rich history of being crazy easy to fake. To the point where if you own any moldavite, especially faceted moldavite, there's a fairly good chance that might be glass given how much of that's flooded the market. Anyway, here's some lapis. This stuff's kind of fun. It was only a couple dollars per kilo. Neat. And finally, we have some big chunks of labradorite. Not much more to say here. I mean, everybody knows the formula for at least one type of feldspar. Alright chat, that's it for the Day 3 Any% category. In the next episode, we're going to go to a sale that's off limits to the general public.